I once went with Rudy up into his apartment, and we turned on the television, and the news was on, and within a moment or so there was a picture of a Vietnamese monk, Tibetan monk, excuse me. Well, actually I don't remember, Tibetan or Vietnamese, who had just set himself on fire. And they were just playing the whole thing on the news. And Rudy looked at me and he said, "You have no idea how hard that man is working." And I never forgot that. There are not a lot of circumstances in our lives that can even begin to hint at what he was talking about. The amount of work it takes to deal with the impossible pain and struggle of a given moment. If anything, the training ground of life is how to deal with minor scrapes and injuries. Things that you can pretty much find a handle for. You can take a deep breath when somebody slights you and go, okay, not going to react. You can get some bad news from somewhere and you go, okay, and you move on. Mostly, the training ground of material life is a slow motion revelation of how to handle almost everything that gets thrown at you. Some of us are born with particularly difficult karma and heavy circumstance that permeates our life early on. And we have to know how to deal with that trauma, and often life becomes the journey of what you might call acceptance or surrender, where you start to give yourself over to a process of letting go of a long-term, insistent pain or displeasure that life didn't serve you well. And you get a whole lifetime to work things through, and you may find yourself on a spiritual path which will tell you, sit still, don't be consumed by the noise of your mind, find a still point, go deep inside, and you will find a place of repose, or of opening, or of caring, or of embrace that will allow you to not have to think continually of the bad karma of your life. Not only does sitting still in your own quietude, in your own inner light, allow you to begin to shed light on your own struggle, but it allows you to spread light on other people's struggles, because they will begin to see somebody who is working it out, working through the difficulty of their situation. Like I say, most human situations are borderline bearable. Some are actually wonderful. Many human situations are exquisitely joyful and playful and enjoyable. And when you find yourself in those, nice to say thank you, because it doesn't have to be that way. You're one of the lucky ones. But there are people for whom the day-to-day is not particularly easy. And yet, I've come across people in cultures in other countries where lives are much more difficult and demanding than the lives we've inherited here in the West, who still have a strange kind of exuberance or joy or ease of being or a lack of feeling left out or somehow dispossessed. I can't speak exactly to their mindset, except that I will tell you, from an outsider Westerner point of view, it's very attractive. Somehow, people in very difficult circumstances are able to express happiness. Real, authentic happiness. I often find people in comfortable situations are not as good at that. They express disappointment. They don't get what they want, what they had 2 minutes ago. There's a sense of entitlement, a sense of, okay, I got what I wanted, now I want more. And it's a real discord that gets created in many people's lives, and no real understanding of how do I move beyond my disappointments. And so, interestingly, life ratchets up the struggle for most people. The demands become more affecting. More people are impacted by your situation. Your job is to satisfy not just yourself, but a family or other people around you or people, cohorts at work, and you find yourself in a bigger version of your own private struggle, and you either rise to the occasion and become someone who serves well, who puts oneself aside a little bit to help the other, and you find a certain kind of nobility in your presence, or you just double down on your own struggle and unhappiness. There's so many ways to approach this human ride that we're all on. And I don't know that the rule book for how to get through life is a generalized text that you can pass out to everybody and say, this is how it works. But they've tried, and there are certain rules that go through, let's say, biblical teaching and religious teaching that have to do with treat your neighbor as yourself, kindness, think of others. A lot of it has to do with compassion and love outside of your own central comfort zone. And the interesting thing that results from that kind of rule book is that generally you'll feel better. There was a whole article in the newspaper the other day about the value of writing thank you notes. And I realized, having just written a lot of thank you notes to people who worked on this movie we did, how good it felt to say thank you. And how appreciative it was. And how you don't need to write thank you notes to most people, but try it. To people you don't even think are prepared to get one from you. There's no reason why you can't just reach out and go, you know what, thank you. It's a funny thing, but what it does to your own system is quite powerful. Not that that's the reason to do it, but because there are certain rules and things we can do that help us. But, like I say, all of the guidebooks are pretty much for the general population. What is the guidebook for you? What is your particular guidebook? And I would venture to say most people don't know the answer to that question. Most people we know are following somebody else's guidebook. Whether it's a teacher of meditation or higher consciousness, or whether it's a preacher or a rabbi or a best friend, you're sort of following their lineage because primarily you haven't found your own. And the lineage inside is found only with a good luck stumble upon it or a search. You cannot always rely on stumbling upon your own inner self. Happens where suddenly something just goes inside you and goes, I'm here. What has to usually take place is that you have to find a will or need or a desire to go into a place where you can hear your own voice telling you what to do. What do I do now? You arrive at that place when you realize everyone else out there has an answer for you, but none of them work. Everybody else knows the situation, but it's not right. What do I do now? How do I find what I need to do, to act, to react to the world? So, for those of you who've been listening to these talks week by week, you know that I'm going to propose the one thing I know, which is sit down, be quiet, deal with the resistance you have to the silence inside, stop being afraid of your own stillness, sit through it long enough, with enough determination for something in you to go, hey, here's what you need to do. Hey, listen to me. Hey, I've got your back. I'm available. I'm right here. Some people who do that regularly begin to discover that they have a treasure inside that they can go to whenever they feel depleted, and they can refill the bank, if you will. They can feel whole again. They can feel the inner wealth of being. They can feel inside themselves that there is a place to go that replenishes the system. And that is the real gift of a practice, of a meditative life, that you have something you can do that will be 98% of the time exceedingly effective. You can go there. It's a known space. You know the entry point. But there's a 2% period of time where the entry point is undiscoverable, where things are really different, really new. For example, set yourself on fire. All the old rules may still work, but boy, you've got to find them really fast, because you've got seconds or minutes to deal with something roaring at you, literally dismembering you in the moment, taking you apart in the most difficult and possibly most painful way imaginable. And all the practice and all the work you've done and all the rule books you've read, nothing addresses that moment. Most of us haven't been to that place, and most of us, if we get there, can't report back on how we did, and how it worked, or how we figured it out. I often, pretty regularly, reference Christ on the cross, forgiving those who killed him, because even though he felt forsaken and the rule book was out the window, the instinctive nature of that pain for him was to forgive those who caused it. I don't know what that monk was feeling at that moment. And I've never been able to bring my mind into that extremity. It just doesn't go there. I know when I contemplate disasters, you know, when the plane is bumping in a way that you think is not right or landing too fast or something, your instinct goes, this could be it. And you may need right at this moment to rise to the occasion of oblivion. And I can only tell you, I don't feel like at that moment I just go, okay, I get somewhere near that, but I don't know if it will survive the impact. It's a kind of preparation for impact, but impact itself is so beyond me, so unknowable, until it's there. I'm bringing this all up because I've had a very weird couple of weeks that were what I might describe slow motion disintegration or pain or fear or nameless, unknowable presence that is not on any level comfortable. It is beyond discomfortable, uncomfortable. And I keep looking for my own inner navigational book to tell me how to ride through this pain, how to ride through this space that I've never been in before. It's almost like being on fire in slow motion. And there is nothing coming back that's saying, oh, this is all you have to do, just do this, do that. I'm just in it, and its unwillingness to dissipate, to free itself, has me in a slow motion, well, I think I used the word disintegration or decomposition, which is really what it feels like. And it challenges everything you know, because it doesn't respond to the practice. It doesn't respond to the rule book. It is empty beyond understanding, and yet there is a reaction to the emptiness. Big reaction. And it only dawned on me, I think yesterday, that the thing that is reacting to this exceedingly difficult moment is the next step in the journey. The reactor to the discomfort is still a presence, a being, a consciousness. And it is saying, I don't like this. It's asking the question, what do I do? And it dawned on me, this is another fragment, big one, of ego mind, of separate mind. And it too needs to be burned out of existence. And I am in the process of watching that happen, I think. I can't tell you for sure. The only reason I'm sharing this with you is, one, I never know who's going to be listening to these talks. I never know whether they have longevity or whether they're meaningful to anybody even in the moment. But it felt to me like I should talk about what it means to arrive at disintegration and the part of you that doesn't want to disintegrate, the part of you that's on fire, the part of you that's burning to a crisp and doesn't know what to do other than, if you will, pray. And that's what I've been doing. And what has come to me over and over and over in moments like this, but this is about as intense as it's been, is in the enormous darkness that presents itself. It's funny, for me it's almost like a whiteness that presents itself, but it might as well be dark. But there is something way, way, way in the distance. It's a little bit like those of you who've been looking at the stars this week and have seen Mars, this bright red planet, closer to us than it has been in 200 years, and it's very vivid and very touching for some reason, for me. And it's almost like in the whiteness, there's something flesh-colored, if you will, reddish, living thing, like a star in a bright sky. But it is the only thing there is. And it is, if you can label it anything, light, hope, love, beauty, truth, real. It is so tiny, it is so minuscule that it's easy to miss. And when you're caught up in the flames of existence, tearing you apart, ripping your flesh apart, burning you into oblivion, this tiny little light is there. It is the doorway. It is the only thing we have. And it's there because during the course of your life, you have made it known to yourself that there is this pinpoint of release that frees you from all matter, from time and space, into something vast. In this situation, there's nothing else to hold on to. And it really isn't a matter of holding it. It's a matter of accepting everything else that includes it, which is the pain, the fire, the brimstone. Accept it all so that it too may announce its presence. I don't know if this makes sense to anybody who's listening. I don't know if this is a helpful pointer for people down the road who arrive at this moment of going, they're totally lost in their own pain and suffering. But there is something to be said by going, in a way, okay, or thy will be done. Because in that, this pinpoint of hope and love and beauty can reveal itself. If you're hiding from the pain, if you're running in every direction like a mad person, trying to get away, chances are you may not stumble upon that tiny little bit of love and hope. And that's a terrible place to exist. Not that it might not finally arrive when everything else is finally acknowledged, what's the word, annihilated. When annihilation finally happens, it's my belief, it's my experience, that what remains is that pinpoint of light filling the entirety of your being. That pinpoint of light is the doorway to where you have always been. It is the doorway to yourself. It is the pre-manifested, the unmanifested, real that has always been behind the manifested universe that we inhabit. And finding your way to that spot is a life's work, mostly of sitting still and discovering that it exists. You can discover that doorway in your third eye. You can discover it in your heart, in your gut. There are entry points to it. It's not always a singular point, although usually it appears that way. It is that which carries you into the space from which you emerged, that which you were before you became this speck of light that turned into the person you are. Sitting in that emptiness is not fun. It's hard to share it with anybody. And those of you who have entered that space will discover the best you can do is love other people. You don't have to expect anything back. Just the giving of love, of attention, of kindness, of awareness to another person allows this simple space to vibrate itself into consciousness. In truth, I am surrounded by many people who are, in this day and time, very uncomfortable in themselves, in their bodies, and in the world. There are very few places to go for solace when you look around yourself. It's just not penetrating the outside. I mean, it certainly is the envelope of nature and beauty that's around us that you can draw from. But if you don't have this still pointedness, you will not see any of that as fulfilling or satisfying. The job, the work, is to find your way into the tiny bit of light inside you. And if you can't find your way into it, turn it into a source of light for other people. And it will happen just by your own kindness, writing a thank you note, offering to help your friends do something, go somewhere, taking somebody out to dinner, doing something completely new in your life. I'm afraid to announce this to anybody because everybody's going to hold me to it, but I've decided that somehow before I leave this world I want to sing some opera aria really well. So I'm determined to take singing lessons, even though I have one of those voices that the school teacher in 5th grade said, just move your mouth, like you're singing. So it's like a tiny little idea that's fermenting and fomenting, enough to get me to go online and find people nearby. This idea of giving voice to the feelings, the emotions, the heart that's working inside. It's so absolutely other to me of anything I would want to do, and yet it feels like that's where you go. Reach out into the otherness and see what happens. And so I share that with you, not so you can all ask me when am I giving my first concert, but so that you might consider things of the same nature. What's the place you can go? What's the thing you can do to inspire you to find the love and the joy and the beauty and the sweetness and the truth and the reality that shine through all of this, but often become obscured by our density, by our fear, by our emptiness, by the various things that are going on around us. I know that by talking about all of this, anybody who wants to look at me as quote unquote an awakened person giving vent to the emptiness should feel very likely that they better run to somebody else who's pure and got it, who don't go through these experiences. And I recommend that. I don't care if you all run to the other people, but I hope those other people will share with you their honesty, that if you sit down and light yourself on fire, you're going to be going through something you haven't gone through before, and you're going to be working your ass off. And if they're going to just tell you, just sit there and smile, it's okay, not a problem, I would say, I hope you're right. We're all on this journey, guys. We're all facing mortality. We're all facing it in a big way. And the journey to it has an instruction book that works only for you. Find it, engage it, understand it. If it tells you to go out and make a movie about immigrants and their struggles, if it tells you to go take singing lessons, if it tells you to just give a talk, then tell people how impure and imperfect you are as a teacher. Do it. Do it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Nothing to lose here. Nothing. So I share that with you. Again, I always imagine I come back to the next class and there's nobody here. And that's fine with me. I am fine with coming back to this class and it's just me and Blanche. I hope Blanche. And if that doesn't happen, I don't know what to say. They're going to take it all away, right? But anyone who feels that this speaks to any part of them, the dialogue continues. For those of you who feel betrayed by the humanity that goes along with spiritual growth and awakening, find those who transcend it. In the meantime, I love you guys very much. And I'm very grateful that you're here. It means so much to me that I can give voice to the discomforting and uncomfortable and blinding parts of our spiritual journey, and knowing that the final answers are not going to come from me, for you. They'll come from you, for you. And you have now arrived at a place in yourselves where you're going to be able to hear them, and that's what's important. So thank you. Any questions?
Sometimes when I meditate, and it actually feels pretty good, but just when I ask, there's a shift in vision and a shift in presence consciousness. It's almost like things maybe get blurry or a little cross-eyed, not really cross-eyed. And almost I'm more present with myself. The thoughts are kind of still there, but I'm not in the eyes, I'm kind of in here. Is that a kind of a good thing?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's, the roadmap of any given journey on any given day is the map it wants to be and where it wants to take you, more than where you want to go. You really hand yourself over to a process. You just show up. You sit back, you let go, and watch where this thing starts to take you. It may not be where you were expecting to go, but it will take you where you have a piece of information waiting for you. It'll lead you to the things you need to discover about yourself. And it's an extraordinary thing to give yourself over to this process without expecting it to go this way or that way or this way or that way. I know in the early years of my meditation, I would have these great experiences this way, and then they would start to be like this, and I go, no, I want that. I want that experience. And then it would go, well, that's not what you're getting, And trying to work it back to that was a complete denial of where it wanted to go. So finally, I just realized it is what it is. Just sit and watch what it wants to reveal. There's a lot of stuff built within us, layers of it, thick, baked in stuff that needs to be leavened, that needs to be washed away, that needs to be clarified, that needs to be made clear to us, that needs to do what it needs to do. And we don't know what that is. The only way to be part of this process is to enter into the dialogue with the inner being, with the self, and be available to what it wants and needs to do. And it will do it. And every time you sit will be its own thing. As every day is its own thing. You never really know what the day has in store for you. It may seem predictable, but it often has one twist or turn that's like, ooh, it's unexpected. And that can happen all the time in life. And if you're really open to the unknown, which every moment really is, you'll be shocked at how much the unexpected is really occurring regularly and how much you can learn to embrace that and be freed by it. because it really does bring up all the stuff that you can then, if you will, process or let go of or embrace or whatever you're supposed to do with it. But you will learn and learn and learn, and you become a wiser being as a result. One great thing about spiritual life is wisdom is one of the great returns. It may not appear like wisdom to everybody else, but you will be a wise person looking at life through eyes that has a kind of idea of how this should be led, what to do. And if you trust that, it's got a great ride for you ahead.
Just to make it more real, would you be interested in telling us the pain that you're having? Like what's going on?
Well, no, I don't. It's not characterized by a specific pain. It's a kind of. I started talking about it some months ago, of being done. The sense of being done, of being really finished, and completely empty of the need or the want to do another thing, to move forward on any level. It's like, and when you're still in a body, and you're still present, and you're still in a mind, it's a very strange kind of discomfort, because you don't wake up with an agenda of any kind, other than the body's desire to eat, have a cup of coffee or tea. I walk a lot, so it sends me out to walk. There's a certain appreciation of flowers and trees, and I come home and I don't have anything to do. I can make stuff happen, I can answer emails, I can read the news, I can fill the time, but it's not like there's anything that's meaningfully present other than that experience of reading the news and seeing what we've talked about a lot, these children being removed from their parents, and I just said, I can't abide by that, and I'm going to do something about it. Suddenly, everything got full, and then almost as rapidly, empty again, completely empty. Even though there's still stuff going on, it's in the background, I'm not daily involved in it. It may become more active again. Singing lessons may have a weird way of filling some of this, but the fact of no thingness is really odd feeling, and it's mostly uncomfortable. But the lesson of this last few days has been, be the discomfort. Be the wall that's disintegrating. Don't live in it, be it. And watch its unraveling. I've never been here before. It's a very strange feeling, is all I can tell you. It's like, I cannot describe it other than I can only tell you I don't like it. And I can reference it a little bit like the fire has started and it's burning. And there's nowhere to go, and there's nothing to do. And all the techniques and all the tricks I've learned are not quite there. I do have that little bit of light that I can hold on to, which is absolutely beautiful. But it feels a little bit like a trinket I'm holding on to protect myself rather than filling the space. And so I'm just knowing it's there and observing something. And, you know, I mean, if there are people much further along on the evolutionary scale in terms of spiritual evolution, they may be able to look back at this and say, oh, you're just going through this or that. And there might be people who can do that. I don't know them. So right now, I'm looking at it and reporting, as I do to you, a certain stage that if in 10 years you're there, they'll go, oh yeah, Bruce talked about that. And if I find a breakthrough in it that's describable down the road, I'll share that with you. If I don't, then I'm just going to be somehow in a prolonged discomfort. And maybe that's not the worst thing, and maybe, in fact, that's where a lot of people live. It's just I don't have a lot of buffer. I don't want to watch television. There's nothing I want to do that takes me away. I'm just there with it. And it's not particularly fun. On the other hand, it's real, and I'm going to, as best I can, at the risk of alienating anyone who listens to this, share the journey. And, you know, like I say, if you don't want to hear this, turn it off. If you want to wait 5 years when you're suddenly feeling like, I get what he's talking about, turn it on. And maybe it will help. Maybe it'll provide some solace, you know. I don't have the out. I don't know the out other than to be in it. And it's really, really intense. And I referenced the guy on fire because I don't know any other metaphor that expresses it. So, there we go.
I've heard you talk quite a few times about just even those simple things, getting a cup of coffee, reading the newspaper, being the magic of life. How is this state different?
I'm very aware of the framework in which that happens. I do love the coffee and I do love the newspaper. You know, I love grapes. You know, there's a lot that I love within the confines, but I am really aware of the cell wall, if you will, the bodily wall, the flame reaching from the sides. And not interestingly, half of this county is on fire. You know, the world's kind of on fire. I don't want to go into the whole climate change thing that you guys, I think, know on some level I'm concerned about. But I really do know that the outer fabric is beginning to decay, and that fabric is both personal and impersonal. You know, so it's a little bit funny to be sitting, drinking your cup of coffee and enjoying the newspaper, while 20 miles away, there's this massive fire that's growing and growing and growing. And my consciousness is no longer just in the newspaper and the cup of coffee. It's got the whole thing going. And it's big. And anyone who's watching politics and watching the things that need to happen in this world to change it, to make it work better, are not happening. Mankind is very slow to respond to difficulties. I look at all that and I am no longer inured from that total experience. I feel I feel responsible for and responsible to and one with the whole drama, not just the deliciousness of my coffee or nectarine these days. I'm having some really good nectarines, and the grapes are great, and I am truly enjoying them. I really am. And my grandchildren, I love them beyond understanding, but they only, in a way, add to this larger picture because I don't know how much longer grapes and nectarines are going to be available to them. And that is a concern for me. I don't want to be a negative person out here about, you know, throwing scary information around. I'm just trying to acknowledge that we are here trying as best we can in a helpless way to be of help. How can we be of help? In tiny little microcosmic ways, and we need to do that. That's all I can say. We need to do that.
I think, at least in my experience, you know, on this spiritual path since God was a child, I mean, it feels like the perception of the goal of spiritual work is always expansion and feeling, you know, this, you know, whatever light expansion. And I think when it starts to feel like contraction over a long period of time, that begins to be an odd, you know, it's like, it's not what anything that I ever learned about. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know if you experienced it.
I'm not sure if it's contraction exactly. It is living in a fire, living on fire is annihilating. And you might feel it as coming in on you because the biology of the body, especially at my age where the aches and pains are all starting to come at you in a way, is limiting. The expansion is a kind of feeling of the vastness of real being. And I know from my own experience that at some point the body, the world, the universe disappears in a kind of speck of nothingness, and what you become at that moment and what you realize you've always been and what I have already realized I already am is all there is. At the same time, while you are sitting in the middle of a flame and being on fire, it has a powerful aspect, and you're going to have to do some work. As Rudy said, you have no idea how hard that guy is working. I am sitting in the middle of flames that are not in my house. They are 40 miles north, or 50 miles north. I'm just in Los Angeles, the temperatures were 112 degrees. I am watching all of this stuff happening, and I am in the fire. And I am trying to work hard in a way that is new to me to help people work themselves into a place of peace and beauty and joy and love and good nectarines while this is all happening. How do you do that? It's complicated. I've told this story a week ago in LA, I think it was, or a couple of weeks ago, about the guy who's hanging onto a branch with a lion above him and a lion below him, and on that branch is a strawberry, and how he reaches for that strawberry because one way or the other, that lion or this lion is going to get him. That's kind of where we're at. We're more so than ever, we are at that. I don't know how much I want to be an announcer of that to people because nobody wants to hear it. I just read this amazing article on the New York Times about the history of climate change as an issue and how it has been systemically buried from the consciousness of the culture, and mostly with the agreement of the culture because people don't want to look at that stuff. Everyone in my age group who I talk to, who are all sitting staring at a very small future, do not want to reference any of that. We talk about television and movies. I've tried to move it beyond that, but why? They don't want to go there. The reality is that all of this, for every one of us, comes into a conclusion that is not unlike sitting on fire. And at that moment, all of your practice, all of your lessons, all of your learning are going to be tested, and at that moment in time, you're going to be working really hard. As Rudy said, you have no idea how hard that guy is working. If you guys are not developing the muscle of work, it just, I wouldn't want to learn how to do that at the last moment, personally. Figure it out. This is the time. Your existential awareness is a great tutorial for you and for everybody around you. You can live a life that absolutely appreciates the moment, but also acknowledges the truth of what we are caught in. And what we are caught in is dynamic. The walls are closing in on some fundamental level. I will tell you as a writer that those walls talk about beginnings, middles, and ends. But as a spiritual teacher, I will tell you the truth of matter is there is no beginning, there is no middle, and there is no end. But when you are in between worlds, as we are in the manifested state, we experience birth, life, death. Outside of that, none of this exists. We are in both places, and I am feeling the final in my mind, I don't know if it's true, the walls that in some ways define my universe from the rest of the universe. Those walls are now decaying. They're on fire. So, okay. And we have some nectarines downstairs. and
grapes.
And grapes. And honestly, I mean, this is not, I don't mean to depress you. I just want to share that when the journey is expressed as joy and light, that it's just joy and light, I'm not someone who wouldn't want to sign on to that. I'm just telling you my experience has had a lot of joy and light in it, but there's all this other stuff as well. And if that speaks to you or you seem to feel you want to know about it, stay listening to these talks. If you do not want to know about it, go to joy and light. You know, I totally get it. I totally get the obsession and the desire for that. But when the light ignites, you better be able to do the work.